Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have a rock star session for you today. I'm so excited for you that are showing up. Introduce yourselves in the chat. I want to hear where are you coming from. Make sure that your chat is turned to panelists and attendees. We're going to get started here in a minute. I love seeing some of these familiar places. Seth Gordon, where are you coming from? Tell us in the chat. We want to hear from you. Hey, Kevin, nice to see you. Make sure your chat is turned to panelists and attendees so everyone can see. Yes, I know you can see on the screen Colin Campbell is supposed to be here. He is having rough Wi-Fi issues. So unfortunately, you are stuck with me, but it's going to be a blast today no matter what. We're really excited to have y'all. I am coming live from Fort Worth, Texas. We just got power about a day and a half ago. So you can tell I'm living my best life. Stress ate a whole roll of Thin Mint Girl Scout cookies today. So I'm really on the right path for success. Kaitlen, where are you coming from?
Awesome, Katie. Super exciting that you guys got the snow over there in Texas. I am actually zooming in from Playa del Carmen, Mexico. So I got this amazing tan going on right now. I've been spending my afternoons in the sun, so can't complain over here.
My gosh, please tell me you've been having a lot of margaritas.
I have definitely been enjoying one or two of those margaritas on the weekends. I can't lie.
Good. Yeah, what I would do to be on the beach right now. I never thought we'd get this much snow in Fort Worth, Texas, but it is amazing. We are not built for it, so definitely jealous of the beautiful beaches. As we're getting started, we want to know what your role is, right?
Yes, we're gonna go ahead and post a poll here. Give me 1 second, my bar keeps dropping off. Awesome.
Okay.
So when we will launch the first poll and it is on your screen, go ahead and let us know what your current role is. And we'll leave that up for a couple of minutes here. And I will actually introduce myself for those of you who have not met me yet. I'm Kaitlen Kelly, and I'm a manager of sales development for the EMEA region here at Outreach. Usually based out of London, as I just mentioned, I am enjoying sunny Mexico right now. Also co-founder of SDRs Anonymous, which is a SDR community where SDRs and SDR leaders come together. Once a month, you can submit questions anonymously, but it's to share insights and knowledge and kind of spread all of that great sales development information throughout everyone. So as the votes are rolling in, super excited to see. We have tons of SDR and BDRs on the call, lots of management as well. So this is going to be a great webinar for people to walk away from as we kind of take a deeper dive into sentiment.
Absolutely. Let's give it just about another minute or so, see who we've got. We've got some ops people. Love having you ops peeps. Some marketing. I'm always a big fan of seeing our marketing leaders on these calls with sellers. Cross-functional alignment is one of my biggest soapboxes, so I'll save that for another day. But we're really excited to have you all here. Don't forget, before we get started, make sure your chat is turned to panelists and attendees. Also, at the bottom bar, you'll see a Q&A box. Feel free to always ask any questions during the sessions. We already have a great question in there. We'll go over that a little bit real quick. But make sure that you're asking questions. We're actually going to be doing a Sales Hacker Swag giveaway today. So, best questions asked, put them in there. We'll enter you for a raffle. And at the end of this session, you will find out who is going to get our little swag giveaway. So it looks like the poll is ended. We've got a lot of reps and managers. I'm a big fan. Here you go.
All right.
Results. Now, before we get started, Kaitlen, we had a question come in. What's the difference between an SDR or BDR? I know it's a little separate from what we're talking about today, but it might be good to kind of create that baseline.
That is a fantastic question, and I think it kind of differentiates between what the company has and kind of where they set up those tasks and roles. From an SDR standpoint, within Outreach, that's a sales development rep, and a BDR would be a business development rep. From my understanding, a BDR is going to be, a lot of times they could be closing the deals as well, not just working on just the outbound efforts. So that is kind of, it really depends on the function of within that company as well. A lot of people will also say that they are interchangeable. So it could be just taking a deeper dive into what that job spec is. But both of them have to do with outbound prospecting.
Awesome. Great. Well, let's get started, you guys. Once again, don't forget Q&A box in the bottom. Make sure your chat is turned to panelists and attendees, and we'll get going.
All right, perfect. Katie, I'll take it from here. For the Q&A box, it's not letting me view it. So if anyone has questions that they do put into the box, we will answer them through. Perfect. I appreciate it. Teamwork makes the dream work. All right. Moving on. So super excited to take a dive into today. We're going to be going into the differences between sentiment and intent data and what this means for an SDR and how they can leverage this. So my hopes for everyone at the end of this webinar is that you'll understand the difference between buyer intent and sentiment data, ways that you can leverage this to break down reps' prospecting strategies, how you can then leverage sentiment data for in-the-moment coaching. So this is going to be really relevant for managers. And then lastly, we will dive into how you can use sentiment data to really formulate and stay on top of your content strategy and make sure that you're pivoting when you need to. I think all of us can agree within this last year, we all had to pivot real quick last spring and change up a lot of messaging really quick. So being able to understand the sentiment of our responses and how we can communicate with our prospects is taking it to that next level deeper. And I'll dive into that a little bit further. All right, so we're going to launch another poll here, which we just went over with. So we'll go into the next slides. And currently, before we kick off into the biggest differences here, would love to know, how do you currently decide which outbound emails or sequences do you use for your prospects? And we will launch that poll shortly. Let's see. Oh, there it is on your screen. Perfect.
So how do you currently decide which outbound emails or sequences to use for your prospects? Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like whenever I was a rep, it was just whatever marketing sent me. At least whenever I was getting started, right? I feel like that has to be a comment. And if none of these answers apply to you, click other, drop it in the chat. How do you decide?
Yeah, I think that is super common. I know when I had first started out, we kind of had like a playbook, and it tells you, do this one, do this one, do that one. Here's all the scenarios. And so super excited to kind of see how other people are currently doing it and what kind of data we're leveraging to help guide us. All right, so we'll keep it open for about 10 more seconds to get those final answers in. I'm loving the leading one right now for the score here. And give it a little bit more minute. All right, and the poll. So the top answer that we got is, I chose the one that's going to lead to the most. I love that. We all want to lead to the most opportunities booked, the one that's going to get us the most prospects and generate the most IMs for us at the end of the day. So I think the deeper question here is, how do we identify which one that is, though? How do we understand that, and how do we peel that back? So different ways for like leveraging sentiment, and what I'll dive into here before we get into these three is, what is the difference between intent data and sentiment? So when I'm talking about intent data is about where the customer's at. What are they currently researching? And so within outreach, one thing that we leverage for intent data is Bombora. Some of you guys may be familiar with Bombora. You can drop notes in the chat if you have experience with different other types of intent data as well. One of the ways that we have been leveraging intent data is it's understanding where the customer is within their buying process, also what they're going to be interested in. So when you think about intent data, it's going to tell us kind of where the customer is at and where we should be meeting them at. So a way that we would leverage that is if you set up triggers within your outreach formula, and within there, you'll get a trigger. If you have a customer that's researching marketing automation or templates or cold calls, outbound prospecting, these are all keywords and triggers for outreach in general, where I know that we may be able to find a solution for. So you can set up these keywords and triggers for the intent data. So then it notifies the reps. So then the reps are, if you have a prospect that is researching any of those things, and that's just a good like little handful of keywords to be searching for. If you have a company that's researching any of those things, then the rep can identify that, and then we can identify, okay, this is a high priority account and opportunity. We need to get in front of this customer because this is top of mind for them. Not only are we meeting the customer where they are at, but it is also helping us identify where they're at within the education space within that buy process and cycle. So when the rep starts to reach out, they can leverage this intent data and use it as kind of the personalization point. So if I was to say, Katie, if I was to prospect you and you worked at Katie LLC and you were researching on Google or platforms about marketing automation and outbound prospecting, then from there I could reach out to you and be like, hey Katie, within outreach, I understand that you may be interested in X, Y, and Z, reaching out to you today, and then I could kick off my pitch there, and that helps with us personalizing it and meeting the prospects when it is top of mind for them at the right moment, so you don't miss out on any of these opportunities. So that's intent data. When we talk about sentiment data is peeling back the layers, and it's really understanding the emotion or the why behind a response. The reason why this is so important and why I'm so passionate about this and kind of peeling it back is, as you can see on the screen, not only is it helping us with our prospecting strategies, but it's also helping form skill sets within the reps so that they can get stronger within their current role. And it's helping us form that relationship and rapport with our customers, so we're understanding them better and we're able to overcome more objections, essentially, especially from a SDR standpoint at the end of the day. So one thing that kind of sticks out to me with sentiment is understanding the why and meeting them with the emotion. And so when you kind of think about, everyone's heard of the term, people what you will buy rationally, but if we can get to the emotional level, especially as an SDR, which is going to be at the top of the funnel, a lot of times that's the first touch point. If you can unpack that emotional pain and kick off an emotional sale there, later down the cycle, they will buy rationally when it gets into the AE's hands from there. So these are different ways that that I'm leveraging sentiment and how we're using it effectively within outreach in EMEA. So to keep things moving, we will go into the 3 ways that I'm going to leverage sentiment, and what I hope you would all walk away with from today is how we are improving reps prospecting strategies, effective in the moment coaching. So how am I using this data to coach and help reps pivot on a bespoke model? So rather than a spray approach with KPIs, how am I really narrowing down into each rep specifically and helping them kind of hone in their superpower and ultimately get to the goals that they set for themselves? The third way is staying on top of a content strategy and then pivoting for that immediate impact that we all like to see at the end of the day. Alrighty, so as you can see, on the screen is a picture of what sentiment reporting would look like within the platform and how we can increase reps prospecting strategy here. So when I'm looking into one of my reps prospecting strategy here, a couple things that I'm going to be looking at is I'm going to be looking at their conversion rates as well as their touch points per prospect. And then as you drop down here, this is something that is kind of like a clue or like a red flag to keep your eye on, but it's response time. So as we're diving into this, industry average for conversion rates on emails is around 6%. As you can see, as I'm diving into one of my SDRs here, it's Coral, and giving her a shout out here. She's amazing with emails, and this is one of her superpowers. She's currently pacing to have a 14% meeting conversion rate, and she's doing this typically on 3 touch points. So we know within the industry average, it's about a 6% meeting conversion rate, takes anywhere from 8 to 12 touch points to convert. Coral is doing this on 3 touch points. So this is great for me to dive into here, understand what does her workflow look like? How is she pacing? The key thing here with her is her response time is 24 minutes. She has a sense of urgency and she's able to react quickly and overcome. If she gets an objection, she's able to overcome it and she pulls in the prospects there. All of these key things are leading to this 14% conversion rate. On top of this, what I can do from here is this is telling me if she's able to convert off of 3 touch points, if I am to peel back her prospecting strategy, it will then tell me where is she driving the value and is this resonating. On the back side of this, when I have a rep that is pacing with the 8 touch points and maybe an 8% conversion rate, which is still pretty great, that's aligned with industry average, how can I peel back their layers and then look into what Coral's doing and identify the differences so that I can get them all pacing to Coral at the same speed as what she is performing at. So when we're looking into here, the prospect strategy, this is one way that you would leverage it. And then as we peel back the layers even further, before sentiment, as I'm looking into if they're multi-threading, who are they chasing after in their accounts? How is this kind of spread throughout? It was a simple math equation, to be honest. We'd look at, okay, active accounts, and then we'd look at active prospects. If they're pacing at a 2x to active prospects or active accounts, essentially that meant that they were sequencing 2 people per account, which would be multi-threading, which also feels kind of blind because I can't see what kind of personas they're multi-threading per an account, who they're chasing after, and what that spread feels like. When you dig in with sentiment, you're able to take it to the next level and a deeper dive. When I look at Coral's prospecting strategy, I can then take a deeper dive into see exactly which type of personas that she's chasing after, and does this make sense for who our ICP is and who we want to engage with. One of the Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so you've kind of mentioned a few keywords, and for some of those that aren't as familiar with multi-threading, what is that? Why does that matter?
Yeah. So multi-threading is the process of reaching out to multiple people in an account. And the reason why it matters is because you want to create momentum within an account. Not everyone's going to see every email. And so if you don't have that kind of that spread on an account and creating that momentum, it could essentially slow down the process and not kind of get it to convert over as quickly as it could. On the other side, people talk within a company and they have meetings. And a great example of this is that Coral was chasing after an SDR manager, a VP, and the CEO. In their weekly syncs, all of them had a personalized email from her, and they all brought that up in their sync. So people do talk internally, and as you build up that momentum, it helps create that urgency and can speed up the sales cycle as well if we're multi-threading throughout. I think the second thing I want to note on multi-threading is you want to shoot high. You want to go, for above the line personas. So you're chasing, that's the VPs and the CXOs, so CROs, CEOs. When you're multi-threading, you want to be able to get all of them plus your manager and director levels into sequence as well, which will help build that momentum internally with the account and help get the above the line personas buy-in as the deal kind of continues to move forward.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So when we take a deeper dive into sentiment and I'm able to peel it back, I can see where Coral's spread is and where she's putting a lot of her energy into. So below is a snippet and a snapshot of where some of her sequences are landing within the sales leadership org. So you'll see that she has about 13% of her sequences that her replies are coming from are with directors, 9% with VPs, and 7% with C-level. And then other directors and belows are falling below there. So as a manager here, and for someone who is looking to bring in at the C-level or at the VP level when we're pitching to them, you can take this information, you can identify different languages that they are using. And what I mean by languages, are they speaking to the needs of a VP and a C-level, or are they speaking to the needs of somebody at the director and managerial level? So when I'm looking at this data here, I can quickly identify that Coral is getting a majority of her replies. It's pretty spread across here, but the highest is coming from a sales director. The sales director would be hovering on below the line. So it means that we're speaking a lot of features, functions, and benefits, and not to the dollars, figures, and numbers that we would need to be speaking to be getting the responses, to be resonating with the initiatives at the VP and C level. So when you're kind of looking into this, and as I'm looking at like prospecting strategy, this is one of my favorite ways to be leveraging the sentiment data, to be peeling it back at this level to see that we have that multi-threading going on throughout the account, and that the content that we are sending out is resonating with the right prospects. So this is how you do it for prospecting strategy. When I further into the slides, I'll go into sequences and then what it means to understand the replies from a positive and negative standpoint and the objections.
So one of the things that you kind of touched on was like the different speak and different language that you're using. As a sales manager, how do we identify and how do we train our reps to speak to those levels? Because there's a lot of discussion, right, about trying to keep it really casual and like you're talking to a friend, but how do we still talk to the points that are really important for those roles, right? Like C-levels, more the visionary, and the VPs can be more of the practitioners. And what does that look like?
Yes, 100%. So I think like one of the biggest things that that I've got on board with and like read recently, and it's called Selling Above and Below the Line, and it's by Skip Miller. And one of the things within that is going through and speaking. If you are going for a CXO, it's understanding what those initiatives are. So at that level, they are the visionaries. They're looking to gain market share and to break into new markets and the growth. When you're speaking at the VP level, it's okay, how can we increase revenue but decrease costs? Where can we get those efficiencies? And then as you go down a little bit further, when you go into like a managerial level, that's going to be below the line, and that's going to be more so in the present tense. And that's going to be a manager level, which would be similar to me. So I'm focused on the day to day, the functions, the features. How can I help improve my reps day to day so that basically all the initiatives that above the line people have will bubble down into the day to day of what a manager has.
I appreciate kind of digging into that. I think that's something that is kind of oftentimes overlooked, especially as we're training some of these younger reps who are still sticking to a script. Each script needs to be specific to who you're selling to, right? If you're selling to an SMB space and, for instance, a doctor's office, the receptionist that's oftentimes a 9 to 5 isn't going to want something that's going to be more work for them, right? But the doctor is going to want something that's going to generate more revenue, more business, more clients. And so understanding like how to sell to each area and what those messages look like, I think is so important, so incredibly important. So super interesting. I feel like I could talk about that for days because I don't think people do enough of it.
Yeah. No, I think you know that you do have to have that personalized approach. And at the end of the day, you do need to speak to something that is relevant to them, that because you can't just have a spray and pray approach because everyone has different initiatives. And if we're not speaking to the right initiatives, then it's not going to matter. Or you may get a referral down. And I think I dive into that a little bit later too. So, all right. So I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is my favorite part of sentiment, which is coaching in the moment. So on the slide, you'll see that there's a couple things to think about here when you're coaching in the moment. And are all replies created equal, or is there a positive and a negative? How do you kind of navigate that, and what does that mean? Can you identify a trend or a pattern in consistent objections? And I'll show us how to do that within sentiment as well. And what may be causing these objections? This is one of my favorite ones because each rep may be facing objections differently and maybe overcoming them differently. So how can you identify if one of them is struggling with something more so than the other one? And how can you streamline that so that you can grow and scale at the same time? So overview without sentiment. This is when we're taking a deeper dive into focusing just on the clicks, the replies, and the open rates of sequences. So as you can see on the screen, you can see that there is a 7% reply rate, a 41% open rate, and a 0% click rate because there's no clickable things in these sequences that I have it filtered on right now. So when you take a deeper dive into this, you'll see that not all, just because there's a 7% reply rate, it does not mean that all the replies are good. And it also means that they're not all going to be like created equal, right? So if we look at like UK manual sales leadership B down here, it's at a 61% open rate with a 16% reply rate, which is good. But how do I know what those replies are? Are those replies leading to the meetings booked, or are these opt-outs or these referrals? Taking a deeper dive and understanding where these replies sit and how we can navigate the content and our strategy when we are reaching out and prospecting is what sentiment is all about. Let's see as we go into the next one. Let me take a deeper dive here. It is, so when we dive into this here, you'll see that when you look at the sentiment as a whole and you go beyond just the clicks and replies and opens, it's now going to be dispositioned into different buckets for us. So what you can see is 35% of our reply rates are positive based off of this. And then we have 45% objections, 5% are referrals, 6% unsubscribe, and 7% sitting in other. The power of taking a deeper dive into here within the sentiment is that I'm able to, if I'm getting 5% referral, I can not only filter in on my market or my region, so I have it filtered specifically on the UK right now, but I can do this by SDR as well. And if I see that there's an uptick in referrals based off of their sequence strategy and what they're going out to, this is going to relate back to not speaking the right languages to the right personas. So they're seeing, if 5% is what our org average is on getting a referral, and I'm seeing an uptick and they're getting an 8% referral, I can click on referral and it will drill down into the messages and 90% of the time I will see that we're speaking about features, functions, and benefits to someone at the VP level, and we're getting referred down to a manager. Or if we're reaching out to somebody in marketing and the messaging is not resonating with them, then and we're getting referred to the sales team, then we need to pivot our pitch there. So being able to identify and then click into these different buckets and really pivot in the moment to coach has been super powerful as well. When we look at a positive or negative response and then take it a bit further into by sequence strategy, you are able to identify, okay, if we're getting a negative response, where is this falling? If it is a positive response, is it positive because they want more information, or is it positive because they're willing to meet? And this is a way where you can also tailor your message to them. If we're getting a lot of positive, need more information, then how can we drive that value and information in that first original email so that we're generating more of the willing to meet positive responses? I'll take a pause right there. So if anyone wants to drop any questions into the Q&A or has anything to, I think there is a question in the Q&A, or anything to add to the chat, go ahead and do that. Go ahead.
So we have a question from Maria, and she's asking, is the sentiment data exclusive to outreach? What inputs are used to disposition a reply as positive, objection, etc.?
Okay. Yeah, so for the inputs, we have 3 different buckets that we've built out with positives. So if when it comes in and the email replies on the back end, I'm not a tech wizard, so I don't have like the exact back end stuff here. But there's 3 different dispositions here where it could fall into miscellaneous, meaning we weren't able to like read what the sentiment is. It falls into willing to meet or need more information for the positive replies. When we look into the objections, let me go to the next slide. When we dive into the objections, it then drills down into different buckets. And when we're talking about kind of coaching in the moment, this is pulling from the content that from your reply rates from your prospects, and then it filters them into here. So hopefully that answers Maria's question around where the objections go in positive and kind of what this looks like. If it doesn't, I can follow up with her as well.
Yeah, Maria, if that didn't help, drop us a note in the chat and we can get into more detail. What I'm curious about is, like, for those that don't have this tech, one, obviously, I'm a big fan of outreach. You should totally get it.
Yeah.
But what are maybe some ideas that we could focus on for those that don't have this, on maybe some triggers that we can notice in our team's messaging, whether that be like actually going through their messaging once a week and seeing what they're sending to who, trainings that they could be focusing on with their team, stuff like that.
Yeah. So one of the like best ways to kind of go through this and get a little like insight into the team's email and prospecting strategy is have them BCC you on their emails, especially when they're just first starting out. Have them BCC you on some that they feel like they're most proud of or that they have the best personalization on. Then you can kind of see what that looks like. You can also dive into their email replies. Maybe it is like a weekly thing where they bring like their email objections and you guys kind of work through that together. That could be a way to do it. I'm not, to be super transparent, I haven't done an SDR role without a sales engagement platform. So I think I have the benefits of all of this data at my fingertips at the same time. So, but like a couple key things here, if you were kind of looking at it, I'm a big fan of Excel sheets as well. So maybe you create like an Excel sheet and start like a tracker, and it's like on a weekly basis, and you can kind of see the uptick. If you were to build out different tabs for these different objection buckets, and then you had your SDR team kind of manually put those in there, you would then be able to track the trend there. It would just be a little bit more of a manual process. But if you were still doing that, you may be able to identify a trend and where you would need to pivot there. For coaching in the moment and being able to identify where these objections are coming from and kind of peeling back those layers, there's a couple different things that we can do here. So when someone is saying like, hey, it's really bad timing, not for us right now, that's actually gold, because you want that response. You want a reply. So you're not sitting in that maybe zone. This actually means it's not a no. It just means a not yet. But it also means from a messaging standpoint that you actually haven't driven enough value. We don't understand their pain yet. So that's why it's bad timing. They don't know the solution that you may have. So if you peel back, you can click into this, and then you can go into and you can look at every single email, and you can look at the way that the SDR was overcoming those objections, and then you can coach in the moment for that. So it gives you all the data at your fingertips from there. You'll see that one of our lowest objections is financial, meaning we don't have the budget right now. This is fantastic for us to see because nobody ever has the budget. If we did see this increase, then that means that we weren't pushing and overcoming it. What this is telling me is that the team isn't stopping at we don't have a budget right now. They're coming back and pushing past it. And so these are just different ways where these could set off triggers so that you're able to coach in the moment and then overcome those objections too. If it's not the right person, this definitely leans back to we're not speaking the right language. We're not talking to the initiatives of that person. How can we pivot the way that our personalization in that first email so that it is resonating with that person and they see the value off that first thread?
Yeah, I really liked your advice on the spreadsheet. And honestly, I feel like as for those that are younger managers with younger teams, it would be good to get your teams into habits where they do actually do a little bit more manual entry of that, because then you're able to actually sit down with them and think about all those one-on-ones that we've all experienced of, oh, well, what do you want to talk about? Oh, nothing. I feel like things are going great. Oh, great. Yeah, that's awesome. Glad you're happy. Okay, on with your own. I'll give you 20 minutes back, right? Like how useless those are. And so imagine if you enable your reps to bring some information of, here's what's been working really well and here's why I think it's worked well. What do you think? And so I think that there's a lot of power in a lot of opportunity to help train your reps for even more ownership, right? That's what we all want our reps to have, is ownership of what they're doing, have that responsibility. And especially these kids that are sometimes coming right out of college that kind of need a little bit more rigid emphasis and like a little extra help with it. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, I think that's when I had first started out as an SDR about 2 years ago, I was using an Excel sheet and I called it my who, what, when document. And it was manually logging every opportunity, the outcome of the opportunity, the date, the title. And I still make all my reps do it to this day, even though we have this system. But you're right, it does create ownership. And the more that you can own your own business, the more successful you will be. And you have a better understanding. Being able to have sentiment and kind of peel back these layers just makes your prospecting efforts a lot stronger because you're able to peel it back, understand where you need to pivot, where the customers are at. One tip and the beauty of this, and if you do this manually into an Excel sheet too, you now have a bank. Like if you're at that last week of the month and you need to get over the line for quota, I'll have my team go back through their objections in the last 3 months and pull these up. Anyone who said bad timing, anyone who said no, not the right person, or already had a solution and possibly that was coming up in the next quarter or so, I'll have them dig back through here and then put extra emphasis onto those prospects and go back after them again. And so if you're doing this out of an Excel sheet, you can color code that Excel sheet and then prioritize it. And then you always have a hit list from month over month of the ones that you're going to be chasing down because maybe you didn't convert the first time around. But it's a good way to kind of little extra something to keep in your back pocket.
Yeah, that's awesome. And honestly, how much money have we all left on the table by not touching back with those people who said, oh, call me in 6 months, or, it's just not the right timing, right? I feel like we've all done it. We've all left money on the table by not following up with those.
100%. Alrighty. So okay, I'm going to move on. So how do we know when the content is resonating and when it's not resonating with our prospects? So earlier today, I went through and I kind of talked about the reply and click rates, or reply and open rates. And so on this, you'll see that I pulled all of our sequences by persona here. And when I'm kind of looking into this, I can see my open rates and then I can see the reply rates. One of the interesting things that you can see here is that I can see, okay, my open rates that are the highest in sales leadership, which makes sense because that's our target person we go after. And then our reply rates are at 16. But what you don't see is that these two are pretty much aligned. And then we're going to peel it back one more layer into the positive. And so basically what I'm trying to say is sales operations has a 15% reply rate. And even though it has a 15% reply rate, that doesn't mean that these replies are the right replies. It doesn't mean we're getting the right responses and they are the ones that we are converting. Because with a 15% reply rate, you can see there's been 32 meetings booked. but there's been 49 booked off of marketing with a lower reply rate. So as we peel back the layers and look into beyond it, and we look at the sequences as a whole for the positive, the objections, referrals, and unsubscribes, you're able to identify that actually, even though the manual marketing had a higher reply rate, they actually also had a higher unsubscribe rate in comparison to the ops. So not all reply rates are the same, right? So some of them, even though it had a higher reply rate within marketing, 11% of those are going to an unsubscribe. For me as a manager and someone who's in charge of the content, that is telling me, okay, our marketing messaging isn't resonating with 11% of people. So I would then click onto this, it'd pull up everyone that unsubscribed, and I'm able to dig into that messaging there and figure out where is it falling flat, where do I need to pivot, and where is it not resonating with our customers. When you look into sales ops, I have this one highlighted here because you'll see that the positive replies are the same between marketing and sales op, but 64% of them are landing within objections. So this is saying that we're not driving the value up front, and that they're pushing back on us saying, oh, maybe this isn't for me, or the timing's not right, or I don't have budget. This means it is resonating. It is the right person. We're not getting unsubscribes or a lot of referrals, but the urgency and the value isn't being driven within this. So then I can click into here and I can pivot and kind of see, okay, where do we need to edit our content, and where can I kind of course correct this? The other thing that you can do is you can actually drill down and identify which reps specifically to see if there's a trend within there as well. And then that's how you can also coach within the moment. Oh, I will pause right there because this is like a lot of numbers and data to take in. And I think it's interesting to kind of peel it back an extra layer and kind of see the benefits of understanding the replies and being able to drill down a little bit deeper here. I think like a perfect example of this would be when we were looking at a sequence strategy of one of my reps specifically. He had a really high reply rate, but it wasn't converting over. They had above average for the objections, and we weren't able to convert it down. You can then drill down deeper into the sequence on each step, and we noticed that this rep was not converting until their fourth email out. And so when somebody is converting on the fourth email out, that's kind of the power of persistence, right? It's not the power of driving value up front. That's the power of your touch points. So when we were able to identify that and take it another step deeper, kind of see when he was converting, we were able to pivot and ensure that our personalization in that first email was creating the relevancy to the prospect, tying back to the value, ultimately decreasing his touch points that he was needing to convert. All right. So we are off to the final portion, which is a game. So now that we've kind of gone through some of these slides here and we've kind of talked about sentiment and what it means, we're going to put up a couple of examples here and kind of run through them. And we have some polls, which Katie, do you mind running the polls as I kind of talk through?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So the first one that we're going to go to, we have an example. And what we're going to need to do is, this is one of our email replies. Based off of this email, what would you think is it a positive? Is it a negative response? Which bucket would it roll into from here? So Katie will launch the poll, and then we can talk about what that would mean and how you would kind of leverage this data.
Okay. Is this email positive or negative? Hey, Coral, I hope you're well. Sorry for missing your call. It's been pretty manic this end. Let me discuss with the team, and if it's something that we're interested in, I'll get back to you. Smiley face. Many thanks, Andy. We're kind of split. I'll give you guys about 15 more seconds.
All right. This is intriguing. I love this.
Okay, here we go.
All right, let's pull it. Okay. We got 56% said this is positive, 44% said it was negative. Love the interaction here on this. We will unveil the results.
Yep, they're sharing.
All right, perfect, cool. So this is positive, and the reason why this is positive, and it's going to flow into, it's not flowing into willing to meet or more information, it's flowing into our miscellaneous reasons thing. So the biggest thing here with Coral is that this is definitely a positive response. It's not a negative. It's not an unsubscribe or pushing us off for not right now. This person is going back and discussing with the team, and then they said they'll get back to you. So the way that we would kind of coach in this moment here for Coral is she'd be like, okay, Andy got back to me and he said he's going to discuss with his team. He's now replied, which means if you reply to a sequence, you're automatically kicked out of that sequence. So for Coral, what she would do, since this is a positive response, this is identified for her. She then creates a task, and she would follow up with Andy in 3 days. Hey, Andy, were you able to discuss with your team, wanted to continue our conversation? So well done on the poll. We have one more to shoot off here. And here is example number 2. This one's a little bit more in depth, and we'll put the poll up on the screen, but I'll read it out for us. And what we're trying to identify is what bucket would this objection go into, and how can we identify that and overcome it? So the response that we received back was, hi, Katie, thank you for reaching out. It's very early for me to engage. We'll stay in touch. So the different objection buckets that we have is bad timing, not the right person, already has the solution, and budget. Based off of this, and we'll let the poll roll for another 15 seconds.
And if any of you want to, if you voted for one thing and you don't know why, we'll go over that too. Because we've got some responses for timing, not the right person, budget, and we'll go over why those others weren't the right buckets.
All right. So, all right, perfect. So 81% were mainly there. It is correct. It is bad timing, saying the reason why we know this was bad timing is because they're saying it's too early for them to engage, but they'll stay in touch. So too early is kind of the trigger, or very early is kind of the trigger here, throwing it into the bad timing bucket. For Katie, this would be more of a nurture approach for her. So if it's too early for them to engage, the email below talks about how this person just began at a new role. They're probably within their first month or two, probably getting their feet on the ground. Katie's now reached out to him, got the rapport started. He said it's too early to engage. She's going to reach back out in the next month or so, adding value and content to them just to stay engaged, create that rapport, touching base to and see when it is the right time to pick up that conversation. A close second for us was not the right person. So this one would not be, this could be close to not the right person. I see where we can definitely think that here, definitely because they said we'll stay in touch, but it says really too early for me to engage. And it is definitely a push off. So I can see where there may be an opportunity to go elsewhere if we were multi-threading to convert over. But given that this is the persona that we would be chasing after, as he is in charge of headcount growth and innovations, then that's from there. That's how we would know that, okay, it's just not good timing for him right now. And we would follow up with him there. Budget is definitely close there. Budget could be an issue there. Typically, just a good rule of thumb for everyone is usually when somebody switches companies and they do transition over to a new role, they'll have a budget. So the first 3 months when someone isn't new in their role, that's kind of the golden time to be reaching out to them and engage with them and pick up that conversation, because that's when they're looking to implement their strategies, spend the budget, and really kick things off within that new role with a bang. So that is the end of the game. From there, that was a quick 45 minutes diving into intent versus sentiment. If you guys have any questions or want to talk anything through, drop them into the Q&A box if you have any. Katie, if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to run those through as well.
Yeah, I would love to know a little bit more now that we've really jumped into this headfirst. We all have so much information, which is great. Yeah. We've looked at why this matters. Let's kind of take a step back for a second. And as we look, most of our attendees today are managers. And for those, this may be the first time that they've heard about buyer sentiment. Let's kind of take a little step back and make it very high level of why is this something that is only really now being talked about? And how do we really usher this in moving forward?
That is a great question. So I think to answer your first portion where it's like, why is this something we're just now talking about? I believe from like my perspective, I think that we almost didn't really need like this big shift until like when the pandemic happened. It's like, okay, everything has replies and click rates. If everyone's doing the same thing, how are you going to set yourself apart and break through the noise and continue to excel in that role? And so, what more can you do beyond replies and click rates? It's understanding the replies, and it's peeling back the layers and kind of understanding the emotion behind your prospects so that you are kind of meeting them where they want to be met, and you're writing the right content at the right time, and you're reaching them when it is relevant to them, which will ultimately lead to more success within the outbound efforts from our end.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious too. A lot of this is really focused on prospecting efforts. Is there any is would there be anything on the radar for nurturing efforts? To whenever someone's gone through their first sequence, they've said
Mm-hmm.
no, whatever, then we pop them in another nurturing sequence. Are we able to
Mm-hmm.
also identify, oh wow, this nurture sequence is converting back to active leads at 25%? This is amazing. What are we doing? Who are we talking to? Is that something that we can also look at with this?
Yeah, so I think that is like a fantastic point. So when on the sequences that I pulled up there and kind of what we dug into, those were just our manual outbound sequences. You can do that on all the sequences. So if you were to look into a nurture sequence, you're 100% right. Like if we're sending out, typically our nurture sequence send out every 20 days or so. And so if you were sending somebody content every 20 days or so, wouldn't it be really relevant to understand, okay, when are these converting over? At what point in the process? What are the replies looking like? Are you getting opt-outs by the second or third touch point? Or are they engaging? Are they responding back positively saying, hey, this is great, thanks. Let's chat in a month. Now you know, okay, timing's still not relevant. I'm going to keep nurture them. Or if they're responding, on the third touch point and you're able to identify, hey, still don't have budget, it's just kind of staying in the conversation. It's keeping that communication there and understanding where they're currently at as you're letting your sequences flow through.
Awesome.
There.
And I know we've only got a few minutes left, and we're gonna go through some more questions. But like I said, we've gone really deep. Let's keep it a little high level here as we kind of end out our session today. What would maybe the top 3 or 2 takeaways would you have from this concept of buyer sentiment? And
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll ask a follow-up question for that.
Okay, fantastic. So I would say like the top takeaway when you're kind of diving into your sentiment and really understanding it, I'd say if you don't have a sales engagement platform and you're looking to really understand and see like your trends, where it is going, it is keeping a track of it. And so maybe it is on that Excel sheet, but I think the more that you can understand where your objections are coming from and spotting those trends at a level that is deeper than, just those replies. So it's kind of compartmentalizing them. So going into, is it by persona and what are the objections I'm doing, and building that out. That way you're understanding where your content is resonating and where it isn't. What you'll be able to identify is where the gaps are basically within the skills, and then you can coach in the moment for there.
Awesome. Oh man, I don't even remember what my follow-up question was. Oh my god.
There's a really good question on here with in the Q&A, which I really love, and it says, what do you recommend to a college student who hasn't been in sales before, and how do you get trained? Okay, love this, because if you are in college and you haven't been in sales before, totally fine. I feel like SDR is the perfect way to get your foot into the door. Within sales, you learn so many skills there. If you're interested in learning more about it, I would say get on LinkedIn and start networking with people that are SDRs.
Mm-hmm.
If you reach out to any of the outreach SDRs, I guarantee they'll take 5, 15, 30 minutes out of their day to tell you about what their day-to-day looks like, their workflows, different things that they did to get their foot in the door. I'm also going to say Sales Hacker has tons of great content on there that you can look at to learn more about the role. Sam Nelson has tons of stuff on getting yourself onboarded. So if you are, I know people rave about like his content. He puts scripts up, sequence strategies, tons of different things. There's so many resources out there to really.
I am throwing my favorite go-to people in the chat. One is Sam Nelson, and then the other is Josh Braun. Message them. I'm sure that they're more than willing to sit down with you. They are complete rock stars, especially as you're kind of understanding inside sales for the first time too. So, rock stars. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, I know this has been a heck of a session today. I don't know about y'all. I've already learned so much about the different ways to leverage buyer sentiment, the different ways to implement this, why this matters for my teams, how I'm able to track even if I don't have the tech, everything. So, Kaitlen, thank you so much. Thank you, Outreach, for sponsoring this webinar today. This was amazing. If people want to get a hold of you, what is the best way?
On LinkedIn, and then so I'm there on LinkedIn. Drop me a message, drop me a connect request. Looking forward to connecting with you all.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a fabulous rest of your week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.